began as a simple investigation of some bizarre murders in the suburbs of Raccoon City. Nothing in our training could ever have prepared us for the nightmare that ensued. Oh.
Are you alright?
Yes.
Where am I?
Did you kill 23 people? I'm not going to judge you. I just want to know the truth.
What's going on? Engine failure. Emergency landing.
Hey everyone, it's Soul here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. With the first 3 main games out of the way in our Resident Evil journey, and before moving on to what I always heard was the most popular game in the Resident Evil series, I decided to really test my patience and try playing through Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica. These 2 wacky extra games are often skipped over by casual players, as they are both notorious for getting soft-locked at certain boss fights. But despite all of the warnings from you guys, there was nothing you could have said that would have prepared me for what this game had in store. Resident Evil 0 is an interesting case study in the Resident Evil series because it has some really unique elements to it, especially with the multi-character aspect that's not separated by different campaigns. However, despite all of these unique attributes, the game itself has quite a few problems with it, whether it's in the storyline or the gameplay itself, or even the main character of Rebecca Chambers. So at the end of the day, I don't regret saying that there is a 0% chance that I will ever play this game again. At least until they put out a remake, that is. So let's talk about it all. Before we jump in though, please remember to hit that like button, click subscribe to see more videos from me, follow me over on Twitch, and leave a comment down below. Here is your one and only warning that this video contains spoilers. Alright, grab your partner, find those dropped items, and don't miss your train. Resident Evil 0 follows the journey of Rebecca Chambers, the 4th STARS member that we know of to make it out of the events of Raccoon City alive. She is the youngest member of STARS and is part of STARS' Bravo team, who disappeared in the woods of the Arklay Mountains, causing both Chris and Jill to arrive with Alpha Team, therefore starting the events of Resident Evil 1 that occur in the Spencer Mansion. Rebecca's journey starts off with her team out in the woods as they stumble across a gruesome scene of a car that is seemingly flipped over with bodies scattered all around. However, as they look around, Rebecca ends up finding a file of a dangerous prisoner who is in transport by the name of Billy Cohen, who appears to have escaped the scene. As they search around in the woods, Rebecca ends up finding a mysterious train that is standing still on the tracks. Yet, as she makes her way inside, the door suddenly locks shut behind her. With no way out, the mysterious train is soon revealed to be full of infected, now waking up to attack Rebecca. So as she runs through the train cars to escape these horrors, she goes on to run into none other than the devilishly handsome bad boy Billy himself.
Billy. Lieutenant Cohen.
So, you seem to know me. Been fantasizing about me, have you?
You're the prisoner that was being transferred for execution. You were with those soldiers outside.
Oh, I see. You're with STARS. Well, no offense, honey, but your kind doesn't seem to want me around, so I'm afraid our little chat time is over.
Wait! You're under arrest.
No thanks, Dollface. I've already worn handcuffs.
I could shoot, you know.
Yet, immediately after he leaves, another member of Bravo team jumps and crashes through the window, appearing injured and distressed after being chased by these infected. We also, in this scene, get confirmation that these are indeed zombies.
The forest is full of zombies and
Oh my god, they actually said it?
Zombies.
I think that's the first time in any zombie video game or story that I've heard a character call them zombies. Oh, not the stupid dogs! Now, I got really excited here because it's not often in fictional stories where they actually call infected zombies. They'll just simply say infected or come up with some other word for them. So I got really excited and giddy here for a little bit, but I have since realized during the editing of these videos, they do refer to them as zombies earlier. However, during the live streams, for some reason, it wasn't until this very scene that I actually realized it. So putting aside my giddiness for this moment here, the scene itself is quite dark. Rebecca is witnessing her esteemed team member and presumably her coworker and friend die right in front of her. She is now left on her own once more, and as she sprints through the train car to the opposite end, she goes on to encounter Billy once more.
All right, Miss Do-It-Yourself. What should I call you?
The name is Rebecca Chambers, but that's Officer Chambers to you.
Now, I think it's worth pointing out here, there are quite a few cutscenes within the first 30 minutes of gameplay. I didn't notice it during my playthrough, it actually felt pretty natural here, but it's something to keep in mind moving forward because it is slightly disproportionate to the later stages of the game. I find that it does go on to impact the pacing, but more on that detail a little bit later on, because it's during this cutscene here with Billy that he goes on to offer working together in order for them to escape the train alive. But Rebecca, not wanting to work with a criminal just yet, goes on to quickly deny his offer before she immediately faces the consequences of this decision as she is attacked by this mutated leechman that almost kills her, but don't worry because Billy jumps in to save her just in time. But everyone just wait 1 second here with this scene because this scene brings forward the highlight of the game. This crazy leech man that is singing and serenading my eardrums and the eardrums of these leeches because what in the heck is this? This guy definitely adds to the overall wackiness of this gameplay, but he was honestly such a highlight. I couldn't help but chuckle or laugh every time he was on screen. It's so overdramatic. I really loved every single second of this, and it definitely caught my interest because I wanted to know who he was and what he was doing and why. But during all this wacky singing, the train suddenly starts moving, and our pair are now truly stuck as they finally accept the fact that they have to work together if they want to escape.
We gotta cooperate with each other from now on. You got that?
Well, I don't...
Clue in, girl. Or maybe you like being worm bait.
All right, but you just remember I will shoot you if you try anything funny.
This section of gameplay, the train area of the game, is easily the best area the game has to offer. Not only is the atmosphere amazing, but learning how to use these characters and being in a space that feels very tight and confined created a very unique feeling while still keeping to the classic Resident Evil gameplay of solving puzzles, finding pieces, and unlocking doors to new areas. As you learn to switch back and forth between these characters, you very quickly learn that Billy is more of a tank build, while Rebecca can't really take many hits. It was really fun to explore this train, and we even got a fun boss fight here, as well as all of these leeches that are growing in the different train compartments, before, sadly, all good things must come to an end, and we go on to unlock the front door to the engine car, where Billy and Rebecca overhear a radio transmission to Delta Team, who has currently taken over the train.
This is Delta Team. We have gained control of the train. Over.
Understood.
This does not make any sense. How was the T-virus leaked? And why did it contaminate both the lab and the mansion, as well as a train almost 3 miles away?
That's irrelevant. We must make sure no knowledge of this gets out. Destroy the train. Completely. How far away are you from the nearest branch line?
About 10 minutes, Duke.
What happened?
It turns out that Wesker and Birkin are behind all of this with the train. But, of course, Rebecca and Billy don't exactly know that yet. Only we, the players, know this because we see the other side of this radio transmission. Rebecca and Billy don't fully understand who has hired Delta Team, who has put them up to this mission, but the fact that we as a player know created an interesting dynamic moving forward. This is the first time in the Resident Evil series where we as the player know something that the characters don't. It definitely creates an interesting dynamic moving forward, and even though it doesn't have a direct impact on the gameplay experience, the overall story feels a lot more fulfilling due to these additional cutscenes. It's one of the many attributes that Resident Evil 0 has that makes it stand out compared to the other games. It's also just really intriguing to see how stumped Birkin and Wesker are at who this mysterious enemy is. So as we see this radio transmission occur, Delta Team is suddenly infected, leaving both Rebecca and Billy to try and stop this train from being destroyed. They need to act fast, and so we get this crazy mad dash as the pair are forced to be separated in order to disable the train from both control panels at the exact same time. I loved this. Sadly though, I kinda chose Rebecca, which caused some issues because of the fact that she couldn't really get hit by these infected. It definitely made this a bit more difficult than it probably should have been if I had chosen Billy. However, that being said, I loved seeing them rush to get to the other end of the train. I liked the infected coming back, and we get the iconic countdown that Resident Evil seems to always have at the end of their games. So I loved every single second of this. But sadly, with Rebecca and Billy surviving this crash, the train section comes to a close as they find themselves entering the Umbrella training facilities. This is where the problems with this game really start to show. As they enter this training facility, they are caught between Wesker and Birkin watching them through these cameras, and this mysterious singing leech dude who's looking for revenge on Umbrella. This intro is quite intriguing, but with the arrival at the mansion, in many ways it felt like the game was starting over. Maybe it's just the habit that Resident Evil has with dropping us in a gigantic mansion right off the bat, and then letting us sort of find the secrets hidden underneath, that got me in the mindset that we were only just beginning this game and still had a long ways to go. Which, normally, I wouldn't mind, but you see, the first thing I did when we were given the chance to actually start looking around was die. Dude, why is... Oh, Rebecca's dead. What the f***? You think I'm joking, but no, I ended up dying almost immediately because I walked into the one hallway where we had these crazy plant-like creatures that we saw in Resident Evil 2, except for the fact that these were slightly faster, stronger, and had these elastic jumping arms and limbs. It was crazy, and it was a bit discouraging seeing these enemies that were suddenly so challenging and difficult compared to the zombies that we experienced on the train. So I very quickly learned to never go into that room again, at least until I had a much stronger weapon. This experience and encounter, though, should have been the first warning sign of just how difficult these enemies in this game could actually be. But I naively continued on. Exploring the facilities here was actually pretty fun and intriguing in the beginning. I liked switching back and forth between these two characters. I liked the added challenge of making sure they each had their own weapons in case they were separated. And I liked sort of having this inventory struggle of treating one of them as a sort of pack mule, and then the potential of getting separated and being lost without those items. It created a fun, unique dynamic to the classic Resident Evil gameplay of opening all these doors, finding the puzzle pieces, and just exploring this mansion. I liked it in the beginning. However, as the game started to go on, the more items that I found, the more tedious this inventory issue became. We don't have an inventory box, so I had to leave a lot of the items just on the floor at the main entrance, which then would lead me into the issue where I would need a certain piece, or perhaps I'd run out of ammo, or run out of herbs perhaps, and have to run all the way back to the main entrance in order to pick up the piece I need to then go back to the area that I was, because I didn't have it with me. There was also no halfway point because of the lack of the inventory boxes, so it started to really just become tedious and tiresome, and I would very often die because I didn't have the amount of ammo that I needed, and then have to restart from wherever I had last saved because ink ribbons are back in this game compared to what I got used to in Resi 2 and 3, where I didn't need to worry about it. These issues with inventory also went on to impact the issues that I had with ammo because of the fact that I would often leave ammo behind in hopes that I would find it in the next room, but then very often be struggling with the enemies. It's hard to say if the enemy types were just more difficult or the resources themselves were a bit more limited, but I more often than not found myself struggling with every single type of enemy and would be forced to run out of a room, not able to fully explore all the notes or gather all of the resources, just grabbing whatever was the necessity and then getting the heck out because I just didn't have the power to stop these creatures. Every single bullet counted, and when you're like me and your aim isn't exactly perfect every single time, it got more and more frustrating the further we got in the game. But the one thing keeping me invested in this game, despite all of these struggles that I was starting to have, despite my growing frustrations as I wandered around the training facilities, had to be the lore and backstory of not only the founding of Umbrella with Marcus and Oswald Spencer, but also the sort of brotherly rivalry that's going on between Wesker and Birkin. The notes that we are finding within this facility was absolute pure gold here. I was so invested and intrigued to see what was happening in their past, hearing about these two guys that were used not only as test subjects, but also then manipulated into becoming the future and legacy for Umbrella, not only made a lot of sense as to their villain origin stories, but it also just expanded the overall lore that Umbrella and Raccoon City had to offer here. As we find throughout these notes, we go on to learn more and more about how Oswald Spencer and Dr. James Marcus eventually had some sort of falling out that somehow, in one shape or form, led to the death and the presumed murder of Marcus. I was so intrigued to see how this mysterious singing leech dude would be involved within this information, as well as what information Birkin and Wesker knew, and I was just really looking forward to learning more about these characters and the history of Umbrella. I was absolutely loving every little bit of information that we were getting. However, despite my intrigue in these notes, the actual current day story and timeline was really starting to drag because of the lack of cutscenes. Now, I mentioned earlier that during the train there was quite a few cutscenes. They were keeping the story moving, they were keeping the energy going forward. It created a sense of tension as these characters and their dynamic were being introduced, and the overall introduction that this created was amazing. However, with this section of gameplay not having that many cutscenes, with the current day story between this singing leech man making a sort of halt at the moment, with there being zero development between Rebecca and Billy, with us not really knowing where Birkin and Wesker were, and with us only relying on the notes that are left behind for the drive of this story, the pacing really started to suffer here, as the gameplay really started to feel like it was dragging, especially when you add it to all of the other aforementioned issues this area has. The struggles with inventory, the frustrations with ammo, the lack of resources, the difficulty with the enemy, everything started to just build and build and build, to a point where I found myself just not enjoying the gameplay as much anymore. I wouldn't say it was torturous, but I definitely wasn't having that much fun. But after quite a lot of struggles, we eventually finally get some new cutscenes here once Billy and Rebecca are separated, and Rebecca is stuck in a room about to be attacked by these mutated monkeys. It's during this cutscene that we not only get some sort of information from this mysterious leech man, but we also see that William Birkin and Albert Wesker are discussing the identity of this mysterious man and how it could take down Umbrella forever.
If the old conspiracy against Dr. Marcus is revealed, Mr. Spencer's career will be over. Not to mention ours, too. So, the time has come at last.
What are you going to do?
I will simply say goodbye to Umbrella. The biological weapon utilizing the T-virus has almost been completed. Our only remaining task is to acquire combat data.
You can't be serious. I refuse to abandon my work. I have finished the research on the T-virus, but I need a little more time to complete the more powerful G-virus.
Do as you wish. I will follow my initial plan and lure the STARS members into the mansion. Their superior combat training should make them perfect test subjects.
Fine. In the meantime, something must be done about that madman. As I recall, URC is equipped with a self-destruct device in the basement. I'll find it, set it off, and annihilate the place to nothing more than a mass of rubble.
With these developments, I was excited to finally get a little bit more information on the story and to see the current timeline of events progressing just a little bit. And in the following scene between Rebecca and Billy as they are reunited, we finally get some sort of background information about these two main characters as Billy reveals the full story about what happened to those 23 people that he killed, and Rebecca gives us just a tiny hint of her dreams and aspirations.
My first mission, and I've already disobeyed orders. So much for my great law enforcement career. Oh well, I probably won't live long enough to worry about it. Billy, I just need to know. I need to know the truth. Did you kill 23 people? I'm not going to judge you. I just want to know the truth.
It was around this time last year. Our unit was ordered to Africa to intervene in a civil war. Our mission was to raid a hideout of some guerrilla forces located deep inside the jungle. In the end, only 4 of us survived. Only, there was no guerrilla hideout.
What do you mean?
The idiots in charge had us operating based on wrong information. But we couldn't just go back home empty-handed, oh no. Our leader ordered us to attack an innocent village.
Do it!
So did you execute those innocent people?
Forget about it. Doesn't matter anymore. That was then, this is now. Besides, you said you wouldn't judge me. You don't get it. I've only got 2 choices left. Either report to the Marines and serve out my sentence, or keep on running for as long as I can. That's all.
I am glad that we got this moment, because at least it's something. I do feel like I understand the character of Rebecca. I know her. She's a bit naive. She's a bit childish. She presumably has some sort of an affection towards Billy here, and she wants to be a good law enforcement officer. But if I'm being perfectly honest, the fact that she is such a young rookie for STARS makes her really fascinating, and I wish they would have done more with her. Her backstory alone could be so much better, purely because of the fact that she is so young on this elite task force. I can't help but feel like her as a character has been pushed to the side, while Billy's story sort of becomes the main conflict and main point of contention between these 2 characters. But that being said, credit where credit is due. Resident Evil 0 here, compared to Resident Evil 1, definitely has a lot more detail and expansion on our main characters. The original Resident Evil didn't really give much detail to Chris and Jill and their personalities, so it is nice to see some sort of semblance of character developments or character establishments between these 2 games that were the early days of the Resident Evil series. So with this newfound understanding for each other's characters and a newfound friendship between them, they move forward as you finally unlock the exit door that leads to a whole new area of the training facilities. Yet, just as I get excited about finally getting to a new space, the game decides to throw us one of the worst possible boss fights in the form of this mutated bat. Now, once again, I made the mistake of going in here as Rebecca. There was no way for me to switch it afterwards either, because it was a bit of a save point, and I didn't want to have to backtrack and reload my previous save from ages and ages ago. But it was a really tough boss fight here. Now, I mentioned the issues with inventory earlier and the lack of ammo, but I didn't mention the lack of the overall herbs. There really are next to no healing items or health sprays, and it made it even more difficult since I had Rebecca here to get through this boss fight, since I really only had 1 or 2 hits that I could take from these bats before I would die and have to start over. It was really starting to feel that every single boss fight that we would encounter, even if it was just a small one, aside from the very first one on the train, I kept getting soft locked in them. It took a few attempts, or I had to go back and try and gather more resources or try and change things around. It was getting really challenging and also starting to get a bit frustrating. But eventually, after some time, after trying to guess the angle of where the bat is based on this one awkward camera angle where you're really close to Rebecca and you kind of have to shoot blind in the air and hope that you hit the bat, after all of those struggles, I did eventually get through this fight, which made me really excited and happy to finally be progressing the story. So moving forward into this new area, and seeing that we had to send one of the 2 characters up with a grappling hook, I decided to finally learn from my mistakes and send Billy up first instead of Rebecca. However, the game decided to trick me because that is not the right character to send. In this area of the sort of laboratory here, There's different chemicals in the corners of these rooms that only Rebecca can access and use, but you need these chemical mixtures in order to progress the story and get the next key. In some ways, I felt a little betrayed and a little tricked by the game. And I get it, it's supposed to be challenging. The game wants you to feel this sort of conflict and challenge of not knowing exactly which character to play as. But adding this to all of the other previous frustrations, adding all of these unique elements, the lack of the inventory box, the issue with ammo and resources and herbs and health, the issue with not knowing which character to send forward or what resources each one of these characters should have, was all becoming just a bit too much to handle. The only way I could progress through this section was to take Rebecca and go all the way back into the training facilities to find the right rooms that had these chemical mixtures, which I think it's a good time for me to point out that this is the first game in the Resident Evil series where I actually had to look up a guide online in order to keep the game moving on the live streams. I don't mind getting a little stumped and stuck sometimes, but knowing just how many enemies I had left alive in these hallways, knowing how big the training facility was, I frankly didn't want to waste your guys' time and my time just aimlessly wandering through the training facility. So yes, I know some people consider this cheating, but I had to look things up to keep things moving. And honestly, I don't regret it, because if I had to run through this mansion all over again, I probably would have stopped playing the game and probably wouldn't have finished it. So after getting the correct chemicals and coming all the way back to give the chemicals to Billy and clean the piece that we need in order to get the right key to unlock the right door, we finally get to an area where I see a tram car, and I get really excited because usually when we get to the final lower level, that usually means we're at the end of the game. So when I saw this, I was really excited to keep going, to see where the story might go, especially because the identity of this mysterious singing man had yet to be revealed to us as the players or the characters of Rebecca and Billy. So with our two characters finally being reunited, I was so excited to get to this tram car before Billy is then knocked over the edge by a mutated monkey, leaving Rebecca to fight this awful boss. Well, you're not really supposed to fight it, you're just supposed to avoid it and get on the tram car here, but man did I get stuck on this one. I had no ammo, no health. I just had to run and get lucky and hope that I could dodge and avoid this creature here, and it took me quite a while once more, but eventually, after quite a few attempts, I finally successfully got on the tram car and headed down and immediately saved as soon as possible so that I would never, ever have to do that section of gameplay again. As we explore this new area, we find the elevator shaft in the warehouse where we previously saw the cutscene between Wesker and Birkin, and it's at this area that Rebecca, in search for Billy, ends up finding one of her fellow STARS members.
Don't shoot! You're alive.
Are you okay, Rebecca?
Where is everybody?
They should have arrived here before me. Haven't you seen them? That's unfortunate. If we go straight from here, we should arrive at an old mansion which Umbrella uses for research. Come on, let's go.
Wait! I've got to find Billy.
Billy Cohen? You mean you found that criminal?
Yes, but we got separated and...
No point worrying about him. He won't make it. Come on, let's go.
Sir, please. I need to find him. Don't worry, I'll catch up with you.
With the cheesy romantic music playing, I can't help but think that Rebecca has to have a crush on Billy, because why else would she chase after him like this? But I will say, these cutscenes are all in line with the very over-the-top cheesiness and drama that this game creates, which I kind of found to be fun. I'm not hating on it. It's a bit cheesy, it's a bit cringy, but it did make the gameplay a lot more fun and goofy. Yet, as you progress through this factory door, Rebecca goes on to face a tyrant. This boss fight, again, a bit of a softlock moment, took some attempts, but it was really cool to see one of the tyrants that looks basically identical to the tyrant that we got in the original Resident Evil. Seeing them outside of that environment I thought was pretty fun. Not to mention, this boss fight is in a very close-knit space. You have nowhere to run, you can barely dodge any of these attacks, and even though this one was tough, it was a bit of a fun one. I also want to add that when you add this tyrant to the hunters that we got earlier at the factory when we first arrived, it kind of started to feel like we were getting closer and closer to the Spencer Mansion and the events of Resident Evil 1 as the overlap started to show in the enemy types as well. It's a really nice way to subtly imply and overlap these two games together, especially since we know that Rebecca does end up at the Spencer Mansion at the end of this story. I don't know if this was done intentionally or not, but I still found it to be quite a fun little detail here. So as we explored this factory more, I was really intrigued to see how we would get Rebecca to that point, and more importantly, why isn't Billy there in Resident Evil 1 either? So eventually, after a lot of wandering around, and as my curiosity started to grow with where this could end, Rebecca goes on to find Billy, as well as the aftermath of Marcus's research. Eager to get out of there with their lives after seeing the victims of this research lab, the pair go on to explore the factory, finding all of the needed puzzle pieces in order to escape. I will give the game a lot of credit here. There's some pretty unique puzzles. This box puzzle in particular had me stumped for quite a while, but it made it all the more interesting and fun. However, that being said, I was starting to get just a little bit more frustrated and annoyed that I wasn't getting any answers to the story at this point in the game. It did start to feel like, once again, they were dragging out the gameplay when all I really wanted was some more information about the story. This is obviously a bit of a personal take here, but because of all my frustrations with the gameplay, I just wanted it to be over at this point. But instead of the game and the story wrapping up, we go on to have another fight with the tyrant, as well as a whole nother section where Rebecca has to mix some more chemicals before, eventually, after fighting off so many different types of infected zombies and these plant things, you finally get to the one-on-one boss fight with this mysterious character, who is then revealed to be Dr. James Marcus himself in a younger form.
10 years ago, Spencer had me assassinated.
Oh, time to die, Doctor.
I will take over your research.
He didn't die all those years ago when he thought that he was getting murdered by Umbrella. The leeches that he was researching, this mother virus, went on to infect him and save his life while simultaneously making him younger. With this truth finally revealed, Marcus sets out to attack Rebecca and Billy, seeking to destroy them for good, and we enter into what was probably the worst boss fight I encountered. The reason I say this is the worst one is because of the fact that both of our characters are in this fight. You do have to try and make sure that both of your characters have some items here, because you can't leave the other one just outside of the door. They have to be in the room with you, and it made it quite difficult to make sure that both of them survived, because the AI in this game is obviously not great. So sometimes it would just kind of stand there before running, allowing Marcus to hit them and attack, and I often ran into the issue where, since Rebecca can't take that much damage, I would be playing as Billy, and then Rebecca would suddenly die and I'd have to start over. The only good thing though is at this point in the gameplay we did have the Magnum, and that definitely helped because once you were able to get some shots in, Marcus is finally able to be destroyed. But just as I think they can make their grand escape and make it to the surface, say their goodbyes, and then maybe Rebecca heads off to the mansion alone, we are then hit with yet another boss fight that I was completely caught off guard for and definitely struggled with once more because of the same issue that I just had with Marcus, in the sense that both of these characters needed to survive. Run, up the steps, Billy, up the steps. Okay. Rebecca, up. Billy, up. Billy, up! Jesus Christ, okay. So you're trying to manage the poor AI of your second character here, while also trying to defeat the boss fight, and then in the second stage of this boss fight against the Queen Leech, or Mother Virus, or the T-Virus here, whatever you want to call it, it was just a bit frustrating and difficult because the second stage you have to do this sort of puzzle, so you have to defend Rebecca to make sure that she can open the ceiling vents here, and it all just got a bit much. But the mechanics of the fights aside, after you are able to defeat this Queen Leech, when you finally defeat this T-Virus Leech strand that Marcus himself created, that's finally done and over with, and the two characters escape to the surface, the game gives us quite a nice little conclusion here, while leaving Billy's story a bit ambiguous, with Rebecca saying that she'll report him dead, and Billy goes to run off, presumably into hiding, to find a new sense of freedom. Rebecca, on the other hand, goes forward to the Spencer mansion in order to help save Alpha Team.
I guess it's time to say goodbye. Officially, Lieutenant Billy Cohen is dead.
Yeah, I'm just a zombie now.
With this bittersweet ending to the game, I'm glad that Billy made it out alive, because there was the brief moment in the very beginning that I thought he might end up dying at the end, purely because of the fact that he isn't mentioned in Resident Evil 1. But I am glad that he made it out alive, and with that, Rebecca Chambers' journey comes to a close. Look, as a whole, this game was very frustrating for me, and I feel upset because of the fact that they tried some really unique things that I liked initially, but altogether just added to this very frustrating and annoying version of gameplay. The pacing got messed up because of all these things accumulating on top of each other, and everything just started to feel like it was dragging because of the amount of difficulty that we had. It wasn't just a lack of inventory boxes. It wasn't just the poor AI between these characters. It wasn't just the lack of resources for ammo and health. It was everything adding on all together that creates my frustration towards this game. I wish we got more from Rebecca Chambers, because I feel like we got more of a story from Billy rather than Rebecca here, and I really hope that moving forward, if they do make a remake, that we will get more from Rebecca Chambers, who is again the youngest trainee to ever be in STARS, and I think they have so much potential to make her an outstanding character all around. So I really hope they make a remake, and in some ways, I hope they keep a lot of these unique elements and just improve upon them to make this a bit less of a frustrating experience. Don't get me wrong, I'm really glad I played this game for all of the lore and information that we got in relation to Dr. James Marcus and Oswald Spencer, and the connection and ties between William Birkin and Albert Wesker here. But despite all of that, I am so happy that this game is over, and I will never touch it again. With that, everyone, if you made it this far into the video, let me know by leaving the little camera emoji down below in honor of Birkin and Wesker watching the events unfold through the security cameras. If you guys liked my discussion here, make sure to hit the like button down below and leave your thoughts in the comments section. Did you guys play Resident Evil 0? Would you ever dare? What was the hardest part of your gameplay? Was it also the Bat Boss fight? Because I saw a lot of people online talking about how that one in particular had them stumped. While you guys are down there, make sure you click subscribe to see more videos from me, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you future souls next time. Bye, guys!